building a better Bay Area, moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC7 News.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us. I am Julian Glover, and you are watching Getting Answers live here on ABC7. You know how it is. Every day we talk with experts about issues important to folks here in the Bay Area, and we get you answers in real time. Today, we continue to raise awareness about National Suicide Prevention Month and connect you to life-saving resources out there. We'll also be hearing from Jasmine Trau with the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. We'll talk about the warning signs and her personal story of losing a loved one. But here at ABC7, we are committed to building a better Bay Area, and part of that work includes bringing your stories about the AAPI community, the challenges they're facing, and how we can all be better allies. Today, we want to tell you about a new book. It's called Asian American Histories of the United States. It features a diverse group of voices of immigrants, refugees, and U.S.-born Asian Americans. Joining us live now is the author of that book, Dr. Ceniza Choy, who is a professor of ethnic studies and associate dean at UC Berkeley. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so happy to have you here with us on this Wednesday. Talk to us about the title of the book. We have it right here, Asian American Histories of the United States. You're emphasizing multiple histories. Why is that?
Well, the reason why I did that is to make the point that Asian Americans are not a monolith. We're the fastest growing group in the United States. At this point in 2022, it's a community that is comprised of about 24 million people from over 20 countries in East Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. And so I wanted to honor the diversity, the heterogeneity of our community, and acknowledging that there are multiple origins of Asian American histories was a way to do that, and I emphasized it in the title.
It's such a great point, and so true of all races and ethnicities, right? That no one group is a monolith. No one group has a monolithic way of thinking. They're all diverse, individual, and with very rich histories, too. I want to talk about some of the emphasis that you put on three themes in the book, those being violence, erasure, and resistance in Asian American histories. Why did you choose to feature these particular themes, and what's the significance there?
Well, even though Asian Americans, as we've emphasized, are not a monolith and an incredibly large and diverse group, there are still experiences that bring us together. And among those have to do with the themes that I highlighted in the book, violence, erasure, and resistance. And so I highlighted violence in part to reckon with some of our present day issues regarding the surge in anti-Asian hate and violence alongside this deadly pandemic that we're still going through. But I also wanted to point out that when you learn about Asian American histories, we can learn that this is not new in terms of the racial and medical scapegoating of Asians and Asian Americans as disease carriers. And yet here we are, and we see this surge over the past several years. And so this is where the theme of erasure comes in, that despite our longstanding history, the book covers nearly 200 years of history of Asian migration, labor, and community formation. And even despite that long-standing history, so many of us, the general American public, still knows so little about Asian American experience. And it's still often viewed sort of at the outside of American history rather than being the integral part of US history that it is. And erasure comes up in other forms as well. The use of labels like secret war and secret army during the Vietnam War and US involvement in Laos, or for example, the redevelopment of Asian American historic places and communities. One example would be Pachapa Camp, which was a historic Korean American community in the early 20th century. But getting to the theme of resistance, Asian Americans have historically contested this erasure, this omission of their experiences in U.S. history. And one way was to designate Pachapa Camp in Riverside, California, as an important part of both American as well as Korean American history.
A history that so many people are unfamiliar with. In our history, if we don't know it, we're certainly doomed to repeat it, something that you just touched on there. I'd like to talk about how you've really structured the book. So chapter 1 we know features the year 2020, one that so many folks will never forget. And then chapter by chapter you kind of go back in time as far as history is concerned to earlier years in Asian American history, but truly all of our history, because it is all of our history. Why did you decide to structure the book in this way?
Well, I decided to use a nonlinear backwards approach that, as you pointed out, the first substantive chapter begins with 2020 and then it ends with 1875 and the conclusion with 1869. And I did this different kind of approach because I think it emphasized a couple of major points in the book. One is that Asian American history is complex. And where and when we enter, given the diversity of our experiences and our histories, is really complicated. And so rather than trying to present this very straightforward history in which you go from point A to point B, this nonlinear approach honors particular years, 2020, 1975, 1968, for example, and then uses each year as a touchstone for many different events and Asian American experiences. And each chapter goes actually back in time and then forward to the more present day. And I found this to be, for me, and I hope for the readers, an engaging and distinctive way of thinking about very different experiences.
Experiences that we'll all be able to learn a lot more about when we go get Dr. Choy's new book here, Asian American Histories of the United States. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Coming up, a string of violence in Oakland and a new call for something to be done about it. Oakland City Councilmember Noel Gallo joining us live here on Getting Answers to tell us what he plans to do. Stick with us. Welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us here on Getting Answers. We now want to dig into the unsettling string of violence that we saw in Oakland this week. 4 people were shot and killed, others, including a 17-year-old, injured by gunfire, all within just 24 hours. We want to give you a map now to give you an idea of where these shootings have happened. On Monday night, just after sunset, a woman shot and killed in the Fruitvale district. Less than an hour later, 2 men were killed in a shooting outside of the Leolina restaurant that's on Telegraph Ave, just feet away from an Islamic center. And on Tuesday in the middle of the afternoon, a person was killed near City Hall on 14th and Broadway. Today, we're learning about at least 2 of the victims and getting a look at the chaos that claimed their lives. We do want to let you know you may find the video we're about to show you disturbing, but it is important for us to see this. So we have surveillance video of this drive-by shooting outside of the Leolina restaurant. You can see, as we'll slow it down here, a white car that drives up and someone just starts shooting. Police think there may have been more than one shooter in the vehicle. Now, friends identifying one of the victims, you just saw him on your screen, is 27-year-old Issam Al-Jouri. The other, 57-year-old Bilal, a beloved member of the Oakland Islamic Center. So many broken families searching for answers, many asking the big question, why my loved one, and what can be done to stop this violence. Joining us live now is District 5 Oakland City Councilmember Noel Gallo, representing the Fruitvale. Councilmember Gallo, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Certainly, when it comes to public safety in Oakland, we do have an emergency, and we have to recognize that and be able to reach out to further cooperation from other law enforcement agencies that we have here in Oakland, from the Sheriff Department, the Highway Patrol, in cooperation with our Oakland Police Department. I have parents that are calling me daily, and they're afraid of having their children walk to school nowadays because they're afraid that their children are going to get lost and not be able to return home. So the reality is we do need greater cooperation, greater enforcement within the streets of Oakland, because the reality, the shootings, the robberies, the killings are increasing. And I've grew up here in East Oakland and Oakland all my life, and certainly recognize and see what's currently happening now, because it's not the first time. But it will take cooperation within law enforcement to be able to address the issue and be able to work with the neighborhood and the other social agencies that are on the street dealing with violence prevention. So that's one of the actions that we will be proposing. To be able to get the city council in cooperation with Alameda County, because in reality, look, I'm a taxpayer. I pay for the sheriff, I pay for the highway patrol, and I pay for the police department, and I deserve their safety here in the city of Oakland. And that's the bottom line where we are today.
The bottom line, as you said, you're calling what we are seeing, this wave of violence, a state of emergency here in Oakland. We know one of the plans that you're calling for is for the California Highway Patrol to step in and help patrol the streets in Oakland. In your vantage point, why do you think additional officers are the solution here? How will they make the streets safer?
Well, I think that at one time, we did have the cooperation with the other law enforcement agencies, including BART, including the Housing Authority. We have many police agencies here in the city of Oakland that taxpayers are paying for, but it takes cooperation, because right now the reality is the sheriff cannot talk to the police and the police cannot talk to the sheriff. I'm communicating with the FBI because we have other issues dealing with human trafficking and so forth, and they need to be on the streets of Oakland as well, like they used to be able to address that problem. But the bottom line is I gotta make sure that my schools are safe, and the school district is reaching out to me to see if there's any way that I can get the police department to not only deal with the traffic speed around the schools, but also deal with some of the incidences when it comes to activity within the student body. And so we're trying to work on that avenue as well. But the bottom line, for any city and every government, public safety is the #1 priority. And we need to address that and get back to meeting those needs here in the city of Oakland.
Certainly so. Public safety, the sense of feeling safe that you can go out and about without fear of being shot in one of these just ridiculous drive-by shootings like we just showed video of not too long ago. As you mentioned, students and children. So many of them are usually around Franco Gallo Plaza when that shooting took place just yesterday, you know, grabbing lunch, things of that nature. I want you to make the case here to your constituents as to why additional officers will make folks safer. We know that there was significant pushback last year when Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf called in CHP to help patrol the streets, as we were seeing yet another wave of deadly violence there too. So if you could speak directly to your constituents, some that oppose this idea, why is this the solution? And do you think additional officers could have prevented the violent 24 hours that we've seen?
Well, you know, the reality is, you know, having grown up here, you know, many of us need pushback. I mean, you can feel sorry for me and, you know, try to help me in different ways, but I need the discipline and the pushback that when it is not okay for me to get caught up in the drug scene. I mean, I just had the FBI here 2 weeks ago do a major sting operation where they arrested people in a market laundering millions of dollars to Central America and Mexico because they're selling drugs here in the city of Oakland. And so for me, growing up here in East Oakland, I still remember the drugs when they hit in East Oakland in the 60s, and our families and neighborhoods were never the same after that. So the reality is, it's a neighborhood we need to be able to, one is be responsible for the children that we have, and secondly, be responsible for our neighbors that are in our neighborhood, and also be able to support those that if I need to be cited, then that's what has to happen here in the city of Oakland. And do I need to enforce the laws? Definitely we do. Our population is changing dramatically. I have many people coming into the city that perhaps have had different experiences in other places, but we need to enforce our traffic speed as well as when it comes to the violence. And yes, it is not okay for you to get caught up in the gang activity, because that has also grown. And groups are forming groups to make sure that they protect within their own group or their own neighborhood.
Certainly so, Councilmember Gallo. We only have a couple more minutes left, and there is more ground that I want to cover with you here. Just very quickly, yes or no, do you believe that additional officers will make folks in Oakland safer?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It takes, it takes the cooperation. The officers are here. We just need to work together as a community and deal with the violent issue that we have in front of us, and to make sure that our children continue to be safe and healthy and get to school and back.
Earlier today, California Attorney General Rob Bonta announced the launch of the California Department of Justice, first in the nation office of gun violence prevention. How do you hope this newly created office will be able to assist in local gun violence prevention efforts and hopefully stop some of the crime that we've been seeing, violent crime, we should say, from happening?
Well, it's not about what we say, but what we do. And so the reality is, like I said, I just got a brother that came out of the prison system and is in San Francisco right now temporarily. But so the issue is, when it comes to gun violence, absolutely. But then at the same time, we as a father and a mother, brother and sister, we need to be responsible for those of us that are in the neighborhood where we're high school age or above that. Be responsible for the activity and the behavior that we're committing. And so it does take, at the end of the day, a law enforcement is necessary, but at the same time, the family and the neighborhood also needs to be held accountable and responsible for the behavior we're allowing to happen in our streets. It's not the first time, it may not be the last time, and we've lived it, but it will take cooperation between law enforcement and the neighborhood.
It certainly takes a village there. Very quick question here, only 30 seconds left to go. We know that the unemployment rate in Alameda County, 3.2%, well below the state and national averages. But we know with inflation, it's still so hard, tough for so many families to make ends meet. How do we address the root causes of crime that we're seeing happening in Oakland and truly all across the Bay Area? And how do we create better safety nets to help folks before they perhaps turn to crime?
Well, that's where government working together from the city hall to the county, to the county level and to the school district system. Right now, in the state of California, in the United States, I don't see the cooperation between governmental bodies. And that's what we were elected to do. Sometimes the council cannot talk to the county and the county won't talk to the council. And we need to come together in law enforcement to make sure that, we honor our community. And secondly, that, we earn our paycheck, and that should be the only motivation we need, is to get our job done and work together. That's what's missing here in the state of California and the United States.
Well, it's certainly something that we all want to see you and everyone else involved be successful in, tampering down the crime, the violent crime, the gun violence that we're seeing in Oakland and all across the Bay Area. Councilmember Gallo, representing District 5, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Of course. Thank you. Up next, a story of loss and learning. The Bay Area leader for suicide prevention talks about the risk factors, warning signs, and what we can all do to curb the stigma. Stick with us. Getting Answers right back after this break. Thanks for sticking with us here on Getting Answers. September, of course, is National Suicide Prevention Month, and all month long here on Getting Answers, we've been raising awareness and bringing you resources. A part of that is the new National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. The number is 988. We're also going to put a number up at the bottom of your screen throughout the segment so you can find it there easily. And joining us now with more insight on this very important topic this month and all year round is Jasmine Trau, the Bay Area's board chair of the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. Jasmine, thank you so much for being here. First up, and we might be having some audio issues, so hopefully we can get you in just a second. But we want to ask you, why is suicide prevention such an important mission to you personally? Can you tell us your own story of loss, I believe dating back 25 years now?
Yeah, actually, I lost my cousin. This will mark the 25th anniversary of my cousin's suicide. She was also my foster sister. We were all in 8th grade, and we had lost a friend of ours, Cindy, first, and then we lost Karen, my cousin. And it was a really isolating experience. The stigma then was so much stronger than it is now, and a lot of people just didn't know how to talk about it. People didn't know how to help all of us students, and they did their best, but it was definitely hard to deal with the stigma, and it brought me to my career in suicide prevention. So it's really important to me to really try to decrease the stigma and make sure that people have the language to talk about suicide and are able to seek help when they need it.
Can you talk to us about how your personal experience really inspired you to get into this career? Like you said, in the 8th grade, you didn't really have the resources that you needed, and folks weren't really comfortable enough to talk to you about it. What do you hope that you had then as an 8th grader that could have made the journey of acceptance and growth easier for you?
Part of it was that just having access to different services and different education programs. My first instance of being involved with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention was in 2011. I had just searched the whole, since my cousin died in 1997, I had just searched everywhere that I could for some kind of community, and I was able to find our Out of the Darkness community walk in Oakland, California. And I went there, and it was an incredible experience where I found other people who had been through similar circumstances, and even people who hadn't, but they just felt a pull to support the cause of suicide prevention. And it was really the first time that I didn't feel alone. And so that is something that I wish that I had had access to then. And I think it would have been really helpful for all of the adults and school staff and just the community that we were in to have other education programs to help them with the language needed and just kind of what signs to look for and how to support people.
Jasmine, on that note, and we just saw some of the video of the walks that you were talking about, you know, truly it looks like a sense of community. So many people who've been down a similar road all joining together. Very quickly, just 30 seconds left here in the segment. Can you tell us about some of the signs that folks should be on the lookout for, especially when it comes to teens and younger kids?
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about having depression and having an anxious mood, also an increase in irritability, or noticing a change in the way that somebody dresses or their sleeping habits, eating. We also talk about increase in substance use. We don't talk a lot about online warning signs, though, for social media and different things like that, like posting captions, hashtags, or emojis that are overtly sad or negative, things like that. So
important and such important signs to be on the lookout for. Jasmine Trau, thank you so much for being here, sharing those signs and also your personal story. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.